Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the final academy in our Merge Manager academies. We are finally ready to take the last step. Let's take a very short look at what we will be doing. There will be a very short introduction. That is basically the introduction that I have been running for more than 2 years now. So we will step over that very quickly. The most important part of this academy will probably be the timetable. I will take a look in detail in that at that timetable and explain you exactly step for step when we will be doing what and when exactly we will be shutting down what. There is a demo that is probably a very short demo because I will only demo what has actually been added. This time I will not do a complete demo. I will show you later where you can find all the other information if you are interested in that. And we'll end with the opportunity to ask questions. It will take probably about 45 minutes. So the introduction, as said, this is the introduction that I have been running for more than 2 years now, so I will step over this quickly. We have two managers, a CAPI manager and an online manager, and we will merge those two managers into one. The new CAPI manager will be the online manager, which also means that the online manager will be called the Nfield Manager from now onwards. Why do we do this merge? Well, we only have one product, which is Nfield, and having two managers for one product is confusing. It's expensive. We have to test everything twice. There are features missing from the CAPI manager, such as a view on the sample, which is already available in the Nfield manager, and instead of building it into the to the CAPI manager, it makes more sense shifting that to the Nfield manager. How will we merge things? Well, if you paid attention over the last years, you will have seen this, that we are moving one CAPI scenario at a time from the CAPI manager to the Nfield manager. We have 3 scenarios in total. One is the basic survey, which has already been moved. Second one is the survey with sample points and quota, which also have already been moved to the Nfield manager. And we will now take the last step and also move the survey with sample points and addresses to the Nfield manager. Those scenarios will be closed in the CAPI manager when they are introduced in the Nfield manager, which means that the 2 first scenarios, the basic survey and the survey with sample points and quota, are already closed in the CAPI manager. Those surveys can no longer be created in the CAPI manager. I will tell you in the timetable when we will be closing the last scenario. What will be merged? All functionality in the CAPI manager will be merged with the Nfield manager, and most functionality of the Nfield tool will move to the Nfield manager. Where can I find the Nfield manager? Well, here you see the URL for the different regions. If you follow that URL, you will get to the login of the Nfield manager. You can already do this. All scenarios, all CAPI scenarios have already been opened in the Nfield manager. So if you are still using the CAPI manager, just click on one of these links and it will get you to the login page of the Nfield manager. The timetable. So we will take a look in some detail in this timetable. So the first step in the timetable is to enable the sample points with addresses in the Nfield manager. This has been done. So if you log into the Nfield manager, you should now see, when you try to select the sampling method, you should also see the sampling points with addresses and the sampling point with addresses and quota. This should be done for everyone. Second step is the API. That is a bit complicated. We have an API, in case you are not aware, and that API allows you to automate everything that you do through the Nfield manager. which means that there is an API call to create a survey and to create specifically a survey with sampling points and addresses. At this point, when you call that API call, it creates that survey in the CAPI Manager. And we need a switch where it starts creating those surveys in the Nfield Manager. We will make that switch next week. So from next week onwards, if you use the API and you create a survey with CAPI, if you create a CAPI survey with sample points and addresses, from next week onwards, it will create that survey in the Nfield Manager, which also means that if you use our interface to manage that survey, from that point onwards, you will need to use the Nfield Manager to manage those surveys and no longer the CAPI Manager. Third step is close creating sample points with addresses in the CAPI Manager. That is something that we have already done for the Classic Manager, for the basic survey, and for the survey with sample points and quota. It means that if you go into the CAPI Manager, you create a new survey. At this point, at survey type, this is the only survey type that you can still choose CAPI with sampling points and addresses. And from the 1st August onwards, you can no longer choose that survey type either. So you can no longer create surveys in the CAPI Manager. You can only create surveys from that point onwards in the Nfield Manager. You can still use the CAPI Manager to manage your surveys. That is not needed. You can also migrate your surveys from the CAPI Manager to the Nfield Manager. I will show you in the demo how you do that. So that's the 1st of August. Then, 4th step in our timetable is that we will close the CAPI Manager altogether. That will happen on the 1st of September. So on the 1st of September, if you go to the URL of the Classic Manager, there will be a message that this manager has been taken offline and that you need to go to the Nfield Manager to manage your CAPI surveys. As said, that doesn't mean that you can no longer use your surveys that you have created in the CAPI Manager. You can migrate those surveys to the Nfield Manager, which is something that I would advise you to do as soon as possible, not wait until the last day in July to do that. And then the last step, probably the most dramatic step, we will delete all non-migrated CAPI surveys from the 1st of October onwards. Remember, you can no longer create those surveys. From the 1st of August, you can no longer manage those surveys from the 1st of September in the Nfield Manager. So for those surveys that are created in the CAPI Manager through our own interface, this means that those are surveys that have not been managed for at least a month and have been created for 2 months ago. So overall, time and consuming, those surveys should have been deleted already. If you still use those surveys, that's no problem. Migrate them to the Nfield Manager and nothing will happen to your surveys. There is one specific case, and therefore let me go back to this, the API. If you use the API completely to manage your surveys, so if you do not use our interface, you will not notice that you can no longer use the CAPI interface. So for those surveys that have been created through the API and that never use our interface, if you are such a user, please be aware you need to go into the Nfield interface, the manager, to at least migrate those surveys. We will make an effort in September to identify all the surveys that have not been migrated and still seem to have activity, and reach out to the DA of those domains to make them aware that those surveys should either be migrated or they will be deleted. If you are a user now using the API, please be aware of this. Any questions at this point, Art?
No questions yet, Frank.
Okay, then I will step into the demo. Demo sample points with addresses. What I will not demo is interview management, survey management, quota, sampling points, or assigning interviewers, because all of these have been demoed in a previous Academy about the Merge Manager. So if you are curious how that works, please watch one of the previous Academies. In this Academy, I will only show the addresses because that is what we have added, how to migrate surveys and things that are directly related to addresses, such as the GDPR features, which are now available for CAPI as well. And the response codes for which we have made a change. So with that, let's switch to the demo. So this is the Nfield Manager. I have created a few surveys very quickly. Creating surveys is simply click create, give it a name, then choose CAPI or online. If you only have a CAPI license, you will only see CAPI. And then here in sampling and assignments, you can choose which type of surveys you want. So I have already created these surveys, so let's take a look at the surveys that I have created. First one, CAPI, what addresses where the interviewer manual creates addresses. So let's see how that is set up. That is then simply set up as sample points with addresses. That's all. So we have sample points, and then in the addresses, you can actually see the addresses that are created by this interviewer. So each time this interviewer creates an address and then does a complete sync, those addresses will also appear here in the screen. You will see the outcome of that address, the response code used, the result. When that was done, the interviewer, if you have any sample data, that sample data will also appear here. So that is sample data in the script. If there is an appointment made by that interviewer, you will also see the appointment date. As you can see from the pencil here, you can edit the details. So that is the address description. You can edit the appointment date, but you can only do so if that address is no longer active. So as long as that address is out by the interviewer, is out on a device, you cannot edit it, because that would be confusing, because you would you would have changed this while on the device it still has not been changed. So if you want to change any of this, you will have to make sure that you unassign this sample point, wait for that interviewer to to do a complete sync, so that that sample point is no longer assigned, and then you can edit the details and the appointment date. That's the only thing you can edit. You cannot edit any of the IDs, because that would be very error prone. Yeah, that's it. That's simple and assignment. Well, let's take a look at the GDPR features as well. If I open this, you can see that there are clear profile, delete interview data. Those are GDPR features. That is to say, you can use this if you want to remove data if a respondent asks you to remove data or to anonymize his data. I will not go into the detail on exactly how to do that. There is an entire academy about these features that will explain to you how you should script a survey so you can use this clear profile feature. And what exactly happens if you click on that delete interview data. Point that I want to make now at this point is that this feature, which was already available in online, is now available for CAPI as well. That's the GDPR features. Let's take a look at the other types of CAPI word address surveys that are possible. There's CAPI address word quota. Let's take a look at that. Let's see how we have managed that. So that's sampling points, word addresses, and quota, which also means that there is quota. Quota has been locked because I have already started the survey. Well, this is the quota. It's a very simple quota: male, female, and age. Sampling points look the same, with the difference that we also have the quota here, and then sampling points, the addresses. These addresses have been also created by the interviewers. I have assigned multiple interviewers to one sample point. If you look at the sample point 1, and if we look at the assigned interviewers, no, that is assigning interviewers, assigned interviewers, you will see I have assigned 2 interviewers to this one sample point. So that's something you can do here. And that also means that those interviewers will be working towards the same target. And in the addresses, you can actually see which of these addresses have been created by which interviewer. So that's the other thing, using sample with target, and that means that you can choose whatever you can. You want to assign this to one interviewer, or if you want to assign this to multiple interviewers. Both is possible. Then the last method we have with sample points and addresses is that I actually upload those addresses. So instead of having the interviewer create those addresses, I upload addresses. The sampling method I choose is the same. It's sample points, word addresses, and quota. I create sample points, and these addresses have not been created by the interviewers. I actually uploaded those addresses by clicking upload and upload those addresses. You can download, if you can download a template where you can see what you exactly need as headers to upload addresses. As you can see, it's the same thing. I see which interviewer did those addresses, what the result of those addresses was, and what the result was of that interview. I need to place one warning on this. If you use this uploaded addresses, you can also assign these to multiple interviewers, but that is something that we do not recommend. It's confusing to the interviewer because it means that the same address will be out on multiple devices from multiple interviewers. So chances are that your interviewers will go to the same address. And this overview will be confusing because as soon as you assign this to multiple interviewers, it will start duplicating those addresses, and you will see those addresses multiple times. And that causes a very confused overview of that address screen. Reason is that we never meant this to be assigned to multiple interviewers. If you use this and you want to use that address overview to monitor for some reason, please contact me, and we will go over your exact use case and see what would be the correct solution here. So we looked at the 3 different CAPI what addresses scenario. So that's CAPI where you only assign 1 interviewer, CAPI what quota, and then you can assign CAPI what quota only 1 interviewer or multiple interviewers, and finally CAPI what addresses and uploaded addresses. So those are the 3. And last thing to take a look at before we take a look at how to migrate surveys are the response codes. Those CAPI what addresses have their response codes that the interviewer can choose when starting an interview. Because we are merging managers now, that also means that we have merged those CAPI codes with the online codes. Because we are using these now in the same manager, that also means that you now need to actually designate from every response code, whatever this is, a CAPI or an online response code, or both. To make that easy for you, we have created something which the CAPI Manager did not have. We have created a response code on domain level. So those are the response codes that will be default available for all surveys. And we have created the response codes that were already there, the response codes on survey level. Let's first take a look at the response codes on domain level, because that is something that you will need to take a look at as soon as possible for your own domain. If you go to fieldwork settings and then response codes, you will now see a slight change here that will show for all of these response codes for which platform they are used, KT, online, or CAPI. And especially for your own response codes, for the custom response codes that you have created, and you can recognize those response codes that are the response codes higher than 200. For all those response codes, please, as soon as possible, open your domain and check for all of these response codes if they are correctly assigned to the correct methods. So if you open this one, you can choose whatever this is an online or not, whatever this is CAPI or not, and whatever it is KT or not. Please, if you have CAPI only codes, make sure that you only have CAPI selected there, and especially if you have only online codes, make sure that CAPI is not selected. Because as long as CAPI is selected and the selectable button is also selected, that means that your interviewers will see those response codes while those response codes have no meaning for them. So that's something you really want to prevent, and you do that by making sure CAPI has not been selected for those response codes. As you can see, we also made it possible to actually edit those response codes. You can now also through the interface assign whatever this is a selectable. So that means interviewer can select this from the first screen, whatever this is an appointment and whatever this is a definite or not. So that's nice. That's something that we didn't have in the CAPI Manager. You can still also use those response codes on survey level. For that means you need to go into the survey and then go to set up surveys, field work, and you will still see the response codes. And these are at survey level. So for instance, if I want for this particular survey, I want to change this code, and the only thing I can change at this level is actually the description. So if I want to translate this to Dutch, I can do it as such, and you can see I have translated code 803, but I have only translated this for this particular survey. So that is survey save changes, CAPI address upload. So if I go to another survey like this one, that has not changed yet, and it hasn't changed in the default either. So those are the response codes and the changes that we made to those response codes. So we now have a response code on domain level, but for those response codes, make very sure that they have been selected for the correct platform. So either CAPI, KT, or online. We still have response codes on survey level as well. Finally, the last part of this demo, how to migrate surveys. That's also the fastest part of the demo because that is really easy. If you go back to surveys, you can recognize the surveys that need to be migrated because they have this term here, to be migrated, which means that these surveys have been created in the CAPI Manager. If you open that survey and you go to setup, it will simply say that this survey was created in the Nfield CAPI Manager and you need to migrate it. You either need to go into the CAPI Manager if you want to manage that survey or migrate it to this manager. And since we are closing down the CAPI Manager on the 1st of August, my advice was to migrate these surveys as soon as possible. It's simply done by clicking this button. Click OK, and that's it. Migration successful. And this survey has now been migrated. It can no longer be managed through the CAPI Manager. From now on, you can manage this survey in this manager. And as a reminder, this needs to be done for all surveys that you want to keep, because from the 1st October onwards, we will delete every survey for which this has not happened. That's it. Any questions, Art?
Yes, a few questions came in. Yeah, you talked about this a little bit, but the first question was, at what point should running projects be moved while fieldwork is running? Does that matter?
No, it doesn't matter. It does not have any implications for your field work. So I would advise it to move them as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks. And the second question is, will the Nfield tool work for the Nfield Manager as it did with the CAPI Manager?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, one of our colleagues, Philip, added a note saying that editing the properties of response codes is selectable is definite allow appointment at survey level will be available soon.
Okay, good. And so that is the same as it is on domain level.
Yeah, and Philip also stated that yeah, we are deprecating the Nfield tool at some point, moving all Nfield functionality to the new Nfield Manager. So
at some point, yeah, but as long as that is not the case, you can still use the Nfield tool.
Excellent. Those are the questions, Frank.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's have one current slide. A reminder of the timetable. Again, creating sample points with addresses should be turned on for everyone on your domain. If that is not the case for your domain, please contact the help desk as soon as possible. From next week onwards, the API will create all sample points with addresses in the Nfield Manager, and no longer in the CAPI Manager. From the 1st August onwards, you can no longer create sample points surveys with addresses. In the CAPI Manager, you can only create those surveys. In the Nfield Manager, the 1st September onwards, you can no longer connect to the CAPI Manager. You should use the Nfield Manager to manage all of your surveys, meaning by that time you should really have migrated all of your surveys. But again, I do advise you to do this as quickly as possible. So if there are any problems in migrating those surveys, that we will see them as soon as possible, and we have ample time to solve those. And then finally, on the 1st October onwards, we will delete every non-migrated CAPI survey. Any final questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Final remarks. Recording of this session will be available later this week. The manuals are already updated, so if you want to read anything, I will refer you to the manual. We have not decided yet what the next academy will be. If you have any preference on a subject, please write me an email and we will take that into consideration. Thank you for joining. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.